Sit up. Now everybody pretending. Why you sitting up now? Good evening and welcome to the City of Helena City Commission Administrative Meeting. This meeting is called to order. Welcome and thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission Administrative Meeting. We are pleased to be able to provide this alternative meeting format in the city's effort to broaden public participation. Please be patient as we may experience technical difficulties during the meeting. We welcome your public commentary during the meeting. Please read the following tips and guidelines for the app usage and your participation. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
City Attorney Doctor. Here. Interim City Manager Burton.
Here.
Commissioner Reed. Here. Commissioner Dean. Here. Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here. Comments or questions from the commission? Moving along. Item number 3 has been relocated to 6 Charlie. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Some time ago, Commissioner Reed asked for an update on golf course munis finance, and Director Danielson and the Interim Director of Park and Rec is here to speak on that. And following that, Mayor, I would like to give a brief update with the Commission on where we're at in terms of discussions on formulating a recommendation for City Commission consideration on open container ordinance. And so with that, I'm not sure, I know that in your packet, you've got the financials for the golf course and munis. I don't know if you want to review that or if you just want to ask questions. But with that, I turn it over to Director Danielson, and then we'll have Brent speak to the issues out of the operation.
Thank you. Director Danielson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. Thank you, City Manager. So I put together a 5-year historical look at the golf course operations, financial historical look for the golf cart operations, and then our projected fiscal 23 budget. I know that other commissioners as well have asked for this particular information, and looking at how the funding from the general fund to the golf course to support the golf course, how that's been played out over the years, over the last few 4 years. With the fiscal 23 budget, we're projected to send a total of $897,850 from the general fund to support the golf course fund. I did also split out munis separately, but I would note that there's a caveat with looking at it in a silo outside of the golf course, because the golf course and all of its participants, not only golfers, but also those that walk out there, those that cross-country ski out there, they enjoy using that facility. And it also hosts indoor leagues. It has a pro shop. It has a restaurant that is for all of those residents in Helena to use. So it's kind of difficult to silo munis separate from the rest of the golf course, because it does support those that use the golf course and vice versa. I am happy to answer any questions. I do know that Commissioner Reed did ask one question before the meeting tonight. She wanted to understand what the internal charges were in the financials. And those support, those charges are general fund allocated overhead expenditures. They're parks admin overhead expenditures, liability insurance, and facility maintenance costs is what makes up those internal charges. And I can also let you know that out of the golf course, there are only about 9 full-time permanent employees that run the entire operations out there. The rest of the employees out there are temporary seasonal employees, and I think they do a pretty fabulous job of trying to maintain that restaurant, trying to maintain the golf course and the pro shop and all the operations and activities that happen out there. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point if you have them.
Commissioner Reed?
I had sent that one question, so just so members of the public understand, facilities maintenance is facilities maintenance for munis or for other facilities?
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. It's not only for the munis building,
Okay.
but it also, like if the shop needs repairs or things like that, they, the lights, the electricity, that they support that through facility maintenance.
Okay, thank you. And then the only other question I had, and I'm not sure, it doesn't have to have been a formal process, but setting the prices at munis for the food, beverages, et cetera, has there been an assessment of comparative market rates with other restaurants in Helena?
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. I'm going to have to defer to our golf course interim director on that. I do know that before Todd Fritterer started operating the facility, they were just getting started, and there was a lot of promotional food and beverage to try to encourage folks to come to the facility. I do know that the current golf course manager is trying to get his handle on cost of goods sold out there so that he can appropriately price food and beverage out there. Although I don't know that he has had enough time to really, analyze that he really has indicated to us he needs a full year to analyze the pricing on the food and beverage out there. So other than that, I can defer to Brad Langsether if he has any further detail to add.
Mayor, commissioners, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a formal analysis of all the prices in Helena, but that the prices were set over the period of time that Munis has been open and have been adjusted of late. And so we feel like they are conducive to what you would find in Helena.
Thank you. And just, I've said it before, but I will say it again, the reason I'm asking the questions and have asked for an update is in the context of a possible proposed amendment to the budget based on the subsidies, and the concerns I have, I think, are related to the city of Helena subsidizing one restaurant in our city. And is that, I think previously with budget, we had talked about needs versus wants and priorities for our funds. And so I'm trying to understand the necessity of the subsidy we are providing to this restaurant and how that subsidy is being used, and are we running that business as efficiently as possible. So that is the context of my questions. I appreciate all the answers and I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I don't necessarily need an answer right now about this, but I think it'd be maybe helpful. And we really never received this just in the last couple years since I've been on the commission, but I think it'd be nice to kind of get a historical overview of why munis exist, what the history was before, because I know that there was a contract in place that, from what I understand, wasn't necessarily serving the city well. And then also some of the, and this will probably require city attorney's assistance, but from what I understand, all of that, the property that the golf course is on, much of that is protected or under various covenants from the state and other jurisdictions. And so I'm wondering if maybe we can get a kind of a full picture of what those restrictions look like and how they came to be, And then, you know, that historical picture of why Muni's is where it is, you know, what was the conversation and making that decision. Because from what I understand, there is quite a bit that went into, you know, figuring out what would be in the best interest of the city. I think that would be helpful moving forward.
Go ahead.
Mayor, we can certainly address those questions if it's okay at a future meeting.
Absolutely, yep.
Thank you. Any others? Any public comments on this topic? Madam Clerk.
Mayor, I see no public comment.
Okay, move along.
Mayor, the other item I just wanted to brief the commission on is the work we're presently doing, putting together a proposal for your consideration on an open container ordinance. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Amanda. And the chief may want to weigh in on this discussion as well.
You have the floor, Amanda.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, just for your edification, we met internally with city staff as well as Nikki Zucker, Gordon Connolly, and Riley Tubbs, folks from DHI and one of the owners of 10 Mile Brewery, back in May to initially discuss just concerns and questions related to not only the sidewalk cafe space that's in front of Riley's business, but other considerations related to open container. We've been doing research over the last couple of months related to seeing what other communities do and how they handle this, not only the big 7 here in Montana, but 7 regional communities as well. We have another meeting scheduled on August 31st with that same group. So our hope is to formulate, have a discussion related to some of these other models and see what might work, and then formulate a recommendation to come to the commission.
Okay. Thank you. Comments or questions for Amanda?
I'm really excited to see what comes of these conversations. So thanks for leading that.
Thank you.
Are the,
Manager,
I'm sorry, Mayor, can I ask a question?
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Are these conversations going to be public? Because some of the rest of us who aren't directly business owners do have a vested interest in the open container discussions.
I think that, I don't know if that's a question directed at me, but
The answer is yes.
yeah, that we absolutely would welcome that. I think this group was we were initially approached by the business owners and the DIT to have that conversation, but so it wasn't necessarily restricted at any point.
Okay, great, thank you.
Manager Bird,
Mayor, that's all I've got.
thank you. City Attorney.
Mayor, Commissioners, I have nothing to report.
Okay, department reports. A, adoption of by reference, the state adopted 2021 edition of the international codes and changed the way by which the codes are adopted following the state of Montana building codes adoption of the same. Director Brink, you have the floor. And Chief Building Official Mac, I was told you have 9 minutes. I'm just telling you what Ms. Mac told me.
Oh, we need 10.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mayor Collins and
10
Commissioners.
minutes.
Before you is right now currently a draft ordinance. You will see the final version next Monday. But currently we have it before you in draft form. And basically what this is, it's the yearly or the 3-year cycle adoption of the state minimum codes after the state has adopted them. Current process is we open up the city code and initially or essentially adopt exactly what the state has adopted. We are changed to how we adopt the state codes. Rather than opening up the city code every 3 years, we're just going to make a blanket reference to those codes as they are adopted by the state, and they automatically become city code. So rather than opening up the city code for amendment and adoption every 3 years, we're going to do it one time this last time, and that should be it. Unless there's other amendments that the state passed that perhaps we want to include in those codes, we may open it back up at that point, but we shouldn't have to do a 3-year cycle moving forward. So that's why we brought these changes during an admin meeting, because it was not a drastic change how we have done business in the past, but it is a change.
Okay.
And like I said, Kim Macker, building officials here too, if she's got any questions for her, technical that I can't answer.
You bet.
And Mayor, I think Ms. Mack also brought some reading for the commission.
She brought it for herself.
Oh, so-
Thanks for you.
You have the floor, Ms. Mack, if you want to add anything to it.
Yeah, you know, I have come before the commission and stuff before on the code adoption. The state of Montana is trying to align closer to when the national codes are adopted. This edition is the 2021. You'll recall just a year ago, I came before the commission to adopt the energy code, the 2018 energy code. The energy code is included in this adoption. They did put it in there. The only one that we don't have at this time is the fire code, which is, again, adopted through the fire marshal's office. And we contacted them yet this week, and they have not moved forward with that yet. So we'll still be on the 2012 fire code. So, but using the new code additions, it gives the builders and the public that opportunity for the newer technologies and materials throughout the code. It may look scary, but there's not a lot of changes usually, just a few. We're still planning on adopting and keeping in reference for the adoption, the tiny house provision, Appendix Q, and the straw bale provisions. So gives those builders and residents that opportunity for those different types of structures, smaller structures that they can use. In the process of the state's adoption, they had public hearings, they had listening sessions, public hearings and stuff. And I reached out to the builders and design professionals that I have in my contact and said, hey, the state's doing their public hearing. You guys need to go to it. You guys need to get involved. And then I have also sent out our schedule, the city's schedule for code adoption. So hopefully we'll get some input and stuff on that. We don't have the liberty to change what the state has adopted. So, but we always welcome any public comment and stuff. So, because the state does that through their process. And then say, here, it's all yours now. So.
All right. Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, so Ms. Mack, you'd mentioned that the development community you'd reached out to them, you got a pretty good sense that they're pretty aware of this. Seems like kind of a relatively benign change, but they're well aware of this.
They've gotten used to it. I think all of the builders in town know that it's on this cycle. The state has finally gotten to a point where it's closer to that 3-year cycle. I think we went 6 years one time on one code. So they're aware, and we had the state provides an education conference in March that part of our building permit fees we send to the state that helps provide that training. It was actually free this year to all the participants. And I would send out 2 or 3 notices. Hey, you guys need to come. Hey, you guys need to come. So they know it's coming. And it's, over the years that I've been doing this, it's been important for me anyway in the department. You guys, you need to know that this is coming, and there will be changes. It might not be big, but expect some changes. So.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments from the commission? Public comments on this topic? Madam Clerk. Thank you. Move along. Community Development, zoning discussion. Director Brink, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Collins, Commissioners. Just a update on some of the zoning work we're doing relative to zoning amendments. We've had some work sessions with the zoning commission. We are going to continue those work sessions with the commission to look at several items that have been on the docket for quite some time. Land use tables, recreational marijuana categories that we've got to include in the ordinance per state statute. Some additional items like residential and commercial, and look at our casino uses in the downtown zoning district. We had was a week before last, work session with the zoning commission to also discuss the daycare issue that HCC has brought forward. We wholeheartedly support HCC's position and had already had that on the radar, believe it or not, to put on the zoning commission work session anyway. We are going to make changes to the definitions in our zoning ordinance to support that. We're not adverse to the state ordinance or state code, meaning we can always be more restrictive. So that there's not an issue that we're in the wrong. We're just not in line with what the state has, and we support the need for daycare. We recognize that need and that issue, and staff and zoning commission is going to support those definition changes to better align with the state. We had hoped to move our zoning work along a little quicker. The daycare discussion at the last work session took the entire work session and then some. And we're not concluded with that. So we're going to have additional work sessions to wrap up the daycare discussion and then go on to some more of the meat of our work. So that's kind of where we are as an update with zoning work.
Thank you, Director Brinks. Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, this is kind of a more broad question. How do those discussions pair with the coordination that you all are doing in terms of being more consistent in our development processes and or do they pair at all?
Commissioner Dean, thank you. Not really.
Okay.
These are strictly the definitions for zoning categories. Get more up to date, get more current with what everybody expects for zoning definitions and uses and whatnot, and get more in line with the growth policy. The other item that, or really the prime item that Director Burton, Manager Burton presented to me when I first got here was look at our development processes. We're doing that as well. It's outside of the zoning discussion. That's more of internal. There might be some code changes that we might need to make in the future to align with internal processes. We should get a good sense and good spot to move forward with developers here really soon.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. One more question. So the county at our last city county meeting discussed how they are starting their urban zoning discussions. How does that conversation match up with this, or what do you see moving forward?
So, Commissioner Dean, thank you. We are working collaboratively with the county and their zoning updates. We've colored on maps. We've kind of showed them how we think it needs to align. And that's still ongoing. We had discussions with them yesterday, as a matter of fact, to kind of button up what they're proposing, the urban service boundary outside the city limits. Again, that's another, like the third piece of what we're all working on. Not really part of what we're doing with the city code, but we are continuing discussions and working hand in hand with the county, aligning our zoning with their zoning. Actually, more so aligning their zoning to our zoning.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? Public comments? Madam Clerk? We'll move along. Okay, you still have the floor. Director Brinks and or representative from Helena Citizens Council.
Mayor Collins, commissioners, if you don't mind, I'll take a break.
Yeah.
Let the HEC present their item. And then I can kind of piggyback on additional discussions with what we're doing internally with staff. That's okay.
You bet. Mr. Andrew, are you representing?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'd like to defer to Lowell Chandler, one of the authors.
Oh.
Of daycare definition.
I was about to ask for the introduction of that guy, but he's sleeping, so.
Yeah, he's out. So, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present this recommendation. It's a good motion. We, like Director Brink mentioned, we had discussion at the zoning commission on this already. I commend the zoning commission's efforts to move this along quickly. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a hiccup that I would like to make the commission aware of. At the zoning commission meeting, there was some discussion about a conditional use permit requirement for R1 and R2 zones for group daycare homes. And I would urge the commission, if that does go through, to not approve. If I understand the process right, you have the ultimate approval of what the zoning commission does. Because that would gravely affect daycares in Helena. And as the motion discusses, we're in a childcare desert in the state, a childcare desert in Lewis and Clark County. We're not even close to serving the needs of children and parents. So the city or the county is at 33% for children under 2 and 43% of the needs for over 2. So this is a big issue, and it's not just about, providing good childcare for kids. It's about making sure the parents can get back to work, quickly and in a way that we can help Helena's local economy by making sure the labor force remains strong. So yeah, again, I think this is moving forward smoothly with the zoning commission. I hope we can get this before the commission quickly, because it is a pretty urgent matter. And just as a quick background, the reason this whole thing came up is the daycare that he goes to. They unfortunately had to cut 9 students 2 days before the summer session started due to this discrepancy in the state statute and the city ordinance. So that was kind of the urgency behind it and why I kind of started digging into it. But to be clear, I'm an attorney. I'm not an attorney in childcare work, so this is not my forte. But yeah, I thank you for the opportunity to present this, and I'm happy to ask any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chandler, did the zoning commission, or could you briefly explain the zoning commission's rationale for I think you said a CUP?
Yeah, so it was just an idea from one of the members. I'm not sure if there's total buy-in from the remaining 4 members of the commission. But she had explained that she is working from home now as a result of the pandemic. She moved her office home, and that she can't imagine she's just worried about the disruption if a daycare moved in next to her, of having kids at a daycare with the increase of numbers from the change from the city adopting the state's numbers. So and to be clear, there's a thing called overlap care, which is sort of discussed in the motion. It's kind of, I'm not entirely well versed in it, but it allows an additional 4 children on top of what's allowed in the state statute. It's a DPA, Department of Public Health regulation. So we're only talking about an increase of kids by 3 in group daycare homes. So it's not this huge increase. But that was the rationale, that she just, if a daycare did move in next to her, she would want to, have a say in how it operates, and how they structure it, where they put the playground and what kind of walls they put up and whatnot, which again, if anyone is familiar with childcare stuff, this area is heavily regulated by state statute and Department of Public Health, Human Sciences regulations. These childcare facilities already have to go through a lot of hoops, and require them to go through yet another hoop for a conditional use permit, they might have to hire an attorney. You know, it's a months-long process to get that CUP. I just think it would be an unnecessary requirement and only worsen the dire situation of childcare in our county and our city.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any public comments on this topic? Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I have no public comment.
Okay, moving along. Parks Department, CCIP presentation. Interim Director Lan Sadler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. The Parks Department is going to present a PowerPoint about how we develop our CCIPs in the Parks Department. And I have Park Superintendent Craig Marr with me today to walk you through the developed parks. And Golf Superintendent Steve Link will discuss the Bill Roberts Golf Course. So I'll start out with the Open Lands Division. The Open Lands Division is an interesting division to manage within the CCIP program, in that we're managing natural resources. As you know, the open lands is our natural undeveloped parks. Our public process within the Open Lands Division involves an extensive listening sessions. This process, as you know, was developed during the Chapter 7 update a couple of years ago. We also, after moving through the public listening sessions and bringing it before commission, we complete an environmental assessment of the major projects. The major projects are new trails, trailhead expansions, new facilities, change in use, those type of things. For our general maintenance, we still have the annual work plan. That work plan no longer proceeds through commission, but rather is presented to Holmac and the general public. Our capital inventory is divided into 5 different areas. Of course, we have our extensive trail system. We also have 29 trailheads within the city, 9 of which we consider major. Major trailheads have all the amenities and oftentimes have parking as well. Quite a bit of fencing. Our fencing is either in response to public concerns over trespass issues, or if we feel we need to protect natural resources. And we also have entered our forest fuel treatment program into our capital inventory program, and of course our equipment that we use to do our daily work. So new trails, in essence, will come to the Open Lands Division as a request from the public for a new trail. And as such, we're not relying on capital to fund new trail construction. We're generally working with community partners and or applying for grant funding. Capital for the Open Lands Division comes from our cash reserves. And those cash reserves are accumulated savings from year to year. So we have what you would say a bank account to fund larger projects and equipment purchases. Our surface maintenance and signage installation and all the other elements that have to do with trails are handled through our general maintenance funds that are collected with the open lands assessment. At our trailheads, I would say that South Beatty, in a sense, was a rarity that we would fund a trailhead out of our cash reserves. Generally, again, we will be looking for grant support for new construction of a trailhead, or even perhaps replacement of asphalt surfaces. To date, all of our vaulted restrooms have been purchased with grants that we've applied for. And many of our other amenities, we either work with community partners to construct picnic tables and or construct them in-house during the winter period. We build all of our own kiosks. Things like trash receptacles and pet waste stations, we just purchase with our general maintenance funds. Fencing is also purchased with general maintenance funds, but fencing is a great partnership projects. We've partnered with Girl Scouts of America, Boy Scouts of America, and a number of other organizations because they're great community projects. So again, we're not reaching into our cash reserves to fund fencing. Our forest fuel treatments, basically in the last 15 years, we've, as many of you know, done extensive forest fuel treatments within the open land system. And each treatment is divided into a polygon, and that polygon corresponds to a grant that was obtained in the last 15 years. The city spent around $3 million on forest fuel projects, and over $2 million of that has been grants that we've obtained. Once that treatment occurs, it's tied to a date, and every decade, then that unit will need to be treated again if we're going to maintain what we're looking for as far as our forest fuel management. So that's entered into our capital inventory program. And because we were extremely active from about the 2010 to 2017 period, the city has right around $1 million worth of forest fuel work that's going to be triggered in the next 5 years as we've reached a decade since the initial treatments. Our equipment, like all of the other divisions, we look at our equipment annually, and when it reaches the date that's in the replacement, we analyze it to see if the equipment does need to be replaced. And if not, we simply extend that date out. And again, all of our equipment items are purchased from the Open Lands Division's cash reserves. Looking out into the future, we're going to have to accelerate our ability to reach out and get more grant funding for several components within the Open Lands Division. We've been successful. We're at about 40% of our funding comes from grants, but we need to crank that up, especially in the weed management arena. So looking forward to seeing if we can get back up to that $250,000 a year or so in grant funding within the Open Lands Division. And with that, I'll move from open lands into developed parks. Does any mayor commission, do you have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, just briefly have a question. So you mentioned on the part about the annual work plan and that the department works with Holmac and then through the department rather than through the commission. Can you talk about when that shift happened and maybe like the pros and cons of that kind of shift in direction?
Mayor Collins, Commissioner Dean. So after we completed the Chapter 7 update, at that time we split just regular maintenance away from major projects. And so there was no longer a need to run just, I won't say the word mundane, but just regular maintenance items through commission. So we, again, the major projects, if there are any that given year, move through commission. And the maintenance plan, we formulate early in the work season and present that to Holmac and then put that on the city website for public review.
Okay, just follow up. Is that, and when we went through Chapter 7, we have the major projects and the minor projects. Does that include the minor projects then?
Mayor Collins, Commissioner Dean, At that time, major project had to fit the criteria that was developed in the Chapter 7 update to be a major project, and then everything else just filtered out as maintenance from a minor project.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? Public comments? We'll move along. Finance Director, tax year 2022, fiscal year 23, mill.
Mayor, we have a couple other.
Oh, you're still on this?
Yeah,
I'm moving along. Okay,
Mayor,
let's hear you, Craig.
I'll move through it quickly for you. Okay, so I'll be talking about the park maintenance kind of side of things for the more the developed parks. And so similar to Brad, we go through our capital inventory schedules, replacement schedules every year. Look at the items that are up for replacement or repair. And we always have to push some of those out. We never can really fund all of the projects every year. A lot of our projects though are replacement, repair of existing facilities that have already been approved through the commission, and now they're coming up for replacement or repair. So that's a lot of our activity is based on that. Our capital inventory is broken into equipment and vehicles and equipment and park facilities. So for each park, it lists, you know, the irrigation system, the playground, if it has a building or a restroom, and all those things have a value affixed to them and a projected replacement date. Okay, go to the next one here. So I went through and we pulled out a few things for off of the CIP that would be pertinent this FY23 for the pool and recreation programs. And these kind of are rough numbers, but things like the big sand filter at the pool, the sand inside that huge filter needs to be replaced every few years. So that's up to for replacement. The deck on the concrete deck on the pool has settled and so there's gaps and changes in levels that need to be repaired. Pumps and things like that at the pool are always coming up for replacement because they get used really hard for about 3 months. And then they sit idle for 9 months. And so when you go to fire them up, you never know what's going to be happening with them. At the warming house, since we haven't been able to get the big project going, we just kind of want to do a little added deck in the back and a little roof to make it more outdoor seating for the ice rink in the wintertime. And the furnace is due to be replaced at the warming house. The whole warming house building will eventually need to be refurbished. Some other things, the Civic Center tennis courts need to be rebuilt like we're doing at Barney. So that's completely taking out the asphalt base and replacing it and then resurfacing it, which includes taking out the perimeter fence and the nets and the posts and all those kind of things. Kendrick Field is coming up for some items that need to be replaced or repaired. We always have sidewalk issues. So we take care of all the sidewalks that are around every park in the city. We're always replacing every 5 years ADA, the engineered wood fiber at the playgrounds. And there's a few other items there that are coming up for replacement. And then for equipment coming up, we only have really the Toolcat. We use the heck out of those. They have all kinds of different attachments. We use them for sweeping the shared use trails. We use them for snow removal. We use them for augering holes for various posts or planting trees. They're very useful, and we use them daily. We have, I think, two or three right now, and we use them daily. And then just a little bit of data related to the park maintenance program. We have 41 city parks that we maintain. That's the Memorial Pool is part of it, and the pedestrian mall is another one. 77 irrigation systems and all the associated apparatus. 170 acres of turf we mow and irrigate. 20 miles of shared use paths and park sidewalks, and that includes doing snow removal in the wintertime. For aquatics and recreation, we usually host over 25,000 people a year at the pool, do somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 swim lessons, real value in that. And this last year, we did like 34 pickleball lessons, which is a big up and coming sport people love. And there's demand, so we'll go to our 5 to 10 year.
Before you go there, may I ask a question? Can you go back to the 2 slides back? Yeah, I see the Civic Center tennis court and the tennis court resurface. So are you saying it in total that's 248?
It probably would be because it'll be about 200. That's what we spent at Barney just now was about under 200,000 to do the whole thing. But what we typically do, so the Civic Center tennis court project would be a standalone, and then we would probably resurface another tennis court like Lockheed or Mountain View Meadows.
Okay.
Because we usually have to resurface a whole tennis court each year, regardless of other projects that we're doing.
I'm sorry.
Oh, geez.
If I might, just a question. When you say needs, are any of these projects in the current budget, or are these things that are not in there, not being funded, they're extra?
Commissioner Reed, these are looking at FY23. So when we get to next fiscal year, these would be things that are due for repair or replacement. So they're not funded right now.
So 24.
Yeah. Is it 24? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Question on the tennis courts. So,
Oh, I've opened up a bag.
Yes, you
Can
did.
of worms, man.
well, and it actually is going to connect to the Mills discussion we're about to have as well, because the school district obviously uses our city facilities for their tennis, not just practices, but tournaments and everything else. What is the partnership there, and is there any financial support from the district for the use?
Commissioner, there is they pay us some small fee for using the courts, but it's not significant.
Okay.
But we do view ourselves as partners. I know that they have some tennis courts that are in dire need of upgrading as well.
Yeah. Okay, great, thanks.
Anything else? So looking at the 5 to 10 year forecast, we do have a lot of deferred maintenance. We have some big ticket items like the band shell and Kindred Field that will take some cash to get up to speed. There's a lot of demand. We have demand for synthetic turf. We've talked about that at Kendrick. Pickleball is a big push. The pickleball group has come up with a plan for Barney Park where we would put about 8 pickleball courts in there and really develop that. Of course, it's in lack of funding so far, but we get a lot of questions about the completion of Centennial Trail. People would like to have more permanent restrooms at parks like Northwest and Centennial. And then some of our parks that are undeveloped, there's been kind of a demand to develop some of those parks. So that's what we're kind of looking at in the future.
Thank you.
Questions?
Comments or questions from the commission? Public comments? We'll move along. Okay.
We got one more.
There, you gotta get it right over there.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Steve Link. I'm the golf course superintendent at Bill Roberts. Got here last year in March. Very briefly, we're the same as Craig and Brad. We look at the capital replacement items as they come up on the schedule, and then we make an assessment of whether or not it's necessary to replace those. So we'll break down for the golf facilities and infrastructure. The irrigation system will be a large complex project that needs to be done within the next 5 years or so. It was listed as 2027, which would make it 41 years old in certain parts of it. There's a lot of different ages of the system, but parts of it are up to 41 years of age at the time of 2027 irrigation replacement date. The irrigation system is quite old, and you'll see the red circle indicates a sprinkler head, and all around it is drying dead turf, and that's magnified over the 120 acres that the property sits on. And generally, they're supposed to last about 30 years. So right now, most of our underground equipment is 36 years old, and it will be 41 years old at the time of replacement. The driving range net is scheduled for 2028. That's one that might likely be pushed further back, but that was around $150,000 estimate on the capital spreadsheet. That protects the vast fields, the walking path, and the train tracks behind. This one is actually on this year's replacement. This is 55 golf carts that get rented out daily. And it's about $200,000, and that's after trade-in. And so we trade those in, and every year that we keep them, we get less trade-in value. And right now they're 10 years old, and they're very well worn, and maintenance costs are beginning to skyrocket. We'll likely do an intercap loan for those to pay for those. They generate about $130,000 of revenue each year. We're supposed to have one of these, but we don't really have one right now. Before Director Pinozo left, she did write a grant request for the funding of one of these carts. And so we'll be monitoring the status of that grant and see if funding comes through. These are just normal mowers that we use on the golf course. That one in particular has over 4,000 hours. I think it says 23 scheduled replacement, but that will actually be 24, so next year, not this year. A tractor, our tractor is severely old and we can't find parts, and so we need another tractor for loading material and pulling equipment. This rakes all the bunkers at the golf course, and we already had an engine blow on that, and we fixed it up with another old engine, so we'll need to replace that soon. And then our main rough mower, very expensive unit, but it covers 100 acres of turf and mows over uneven terrain 8 hours a day, all week usually. And then a sprayer that sprays fertilizers, wetting agents, snow mold, fungicides, insecticides, things like that when needed. And those are the main things that are coming up in the next few years, but entertain any questions at this point.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the commission? Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I was just gonna briefly ask, have we been on track for replacing this equipment, let's say over the last 10 years, or would you consider we're behind?
Yes, Commissioner Dean, thank you. I think we are on track. We did get sidetracked with munis. Things got deferred. For instance, those golf carts, the 55 golf carts. From what I was told, they were supposed to be done about 2 years ago, but that was at the same time as munis. So they were deferred 2 years, and so we're a little bit behind, but the other equipment that we operate is all pretty much kept in good order and in track with what we should be doing for replacement.
So Mayor, we've been through a review of the CCIP for Public Works, Transportation, Health Park and Recreation. We'll be coming forward with the police department, the fire department, and facilities. And our goal here is to just demonstrate that we know what we own, what condition it's in, and it's tied to a capital improvement plan that gets vetted every year and comes forward to the governing body for decisions, because we know that across the board, we're never going to be at 100%.
Yeah.
So that's where the priority decisions come in from the governing body. And I hope we're accomplishing that goal.
Thank you. You guys done? Okay. I don't want to step on any tools. Madam Director, Human Resources. Oh, no, tax year 2020. Director Danielson.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. So I wanted to bring this presentation to you before our actual budget adoption date on September 12th to give you some information about our mill levy calculations that we're recommending for fiscal year 23. They're noted tax year 2022, but it's for fiscal year 23. So the city is required every year to set its tax levy. It's defined in the MCA, and our statutory deadline this year is to set it by September 15th. We will be coming for adoption on September 12th, so we will meet that statutory deadline to set the mill levy. Mhm. Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. So the mill levy is really representative, and it takes into account and dependent upon two factors. One is the taxable value of our property, and the other factor for our general mill levy is our inflation factor. So the inflation factor is it's an average of the 3 years. It's provided, it's 1/2 of the average inflation over the last 3 years. So the Department of Revenue provides that inflationary factor every year when we go to set our mill levies. And this year they provided us with that 1/2 of the last 3-year inflationary factor at 1.77%. So when you look at the mills and ask why a mill either goes up or goes down from the prior year, it's really dependent upon your adjusted taxable value and this inflation factor. So if the adjusted taxable value is higher than the inflation factor, the number of mills to generate the amount of revenue for the tax levy is actually lower. This year is a non-assessment year, and so you'll see over the history of these, your non-assessment years, your number of mills actually go up instead of down, because our adjusted taxable growth was 1.71% and the inflation factor is 1.77%. So it's just the inverse. And so the number of mills actually goes up in order to generate the value of the levy. It's a little bit complicated, but they do provide a nice calculation worksheet for us this year or every year that I did include in your packet. Next slide, please. So some people want to know, especially those that are not familiar, what an actual mill is. It's defined as 1/10% or 1/1000th of a dollar, or $1 per $1,000 of taxable valuation. So in taking that information, next slide, please. Taking that information and using the calculation worksheets that the Department of Revenue and General Local Government Services provide, we calculated this year the general levy at 126.93 mills, and this is compared to 121.13 in the prior year. That does include the TIF mills. It's incorporated into that 126. Our permissive health levy calculation is at 27.35 mills. Our geo debt levy is calculated at 7 mills, and our supplemental fire levy at 12.59 mills. And just inversely from what I just talked about as far as the inflation factor versus the adjustable values, you'll see that the general levy and the supplemental fire levy, the mills actually go up in order to generate the number of revenue. But the two levies that aren't calculated in the same way as the permissive health levy and the geo debt levy, those actually have gone down based on the calculation formulas that they provide. And so the recommended proposed mill levy for the city is 173.87 mills, and that's for all of those 4 different calculations. Next slide, please. If you're interested, I can walk you through all of these calculations, but I did want to put it into the presentation because it is a little bit complicated. Basically what we take is the last year amount that we levied, which is this is for the general levy for the $9,399,093. That's what we levied last year. You add the inflationary factor of 1.77%. And then this year is a new piece of the equation where we have to take out a dollar figure, and it's from HB 303. And then what they're doing is instead of allowing us to put that into our general levy, they're going to add that amount into our state entitlement revenue. And so what that bill did is it's just an increase in the business equipment tax exemption that happened. It's a reimbursement to local governments through their actual state entitlement program. And it's considered replacement revenue for the diminished tax base on that bill. So that was a new piece of the calculation this year. But then when I looked out to our entitlement revenue, that actually goes up and it's replaced in a different, revenue stream from the mill levy. And as you can see, the total taxable value for the city is $79,993,046. If I take out, and how they actually calculate the mills on the general levy, they take out the tax increment financing district values plus newly taxable property, and then divide that by the adjusted value. So the 9.5 million divided by the 75 million adjusted value, and that's how I'll calculate the 126.93 mils. There's also worksheets in the packet for you to refer to. Next slide, please. And as I noted earlier, here's kind of a history of our mills over the last 10 years. As you can see in the assessment years, the mill number of total mills actually go down from the prior year, but the non-assessment years, the actual mill levy goes up. The number of mills goes up. And this is just a demonstration of how that factor works. Next slide, please. The permissive health levy, that's a calculation, how the city, it happened in, I think it was 2001. There was a base year that was set for what the city contributes for health benefits for general government employees. So typically those employees that are in the general fund. It does not support employees that are in enterprise funds that are supported by fees and rates and those types of revenues. So it is a base year calculation of what your health benefits, what the city's contribution was for health benefits. And then it's a factor of taking what we're contributing now over that base level, dividing it into our adjusted taxable value and coming up with the number of mills to support that amount. And in the next slide, please. And then this particular calculation shows that it's at 27.35 mills in order to support the amount that we budgeted at 2.3 million. And technically we have to use general tax levy dollars for the 198,000 base. And we're setting a mill to cover the 2.1 million that's over the base. There's also a worksheet in there for your reference. I know this is all real exciting stuff for most people, but it helps to walk people through on how their actual mills are set by the city. Next slide, please. So, and then we have our GO bond levy, which is a voted levy. It's calculated based on the amount that we're going to have for debt service and divided into our adjusted taxable value. Next slide. And so our debt service for this particular bond is $552,500. And so I did make a note that this particular bond expires in fiscal year 2028. It was for parks maintenance. It had originated in 2008, but was refinanced in 2017, and it expires in fiscal year 2028. And then each year we levy enough money to actually pay for the bond debt service. And that's at 7 mills this year. The final mill levy, next slide, is the supplemental fire levy. So we began collecting that voted levy. That was a supplemental fire levy, and the purpose of that levy was to support 6 firefighters and also to support public safety fire capital equipment. It originated at about $900,000 was the estimated amount. I think in the next year, the commission decided not to levy the full amount because there was some grant funds that were being utilized to support those services. But then last year and this year, we're requesting to levy the full amount in order to support those services. And that calculation came out to 12.59 mils. Next slide, please. And this is just how it's calculated, the same way as the general levy, where we're taking last year's amount that we levied, adding the inflationary factor, and dividing that into the adjusted taxable adjusted taxable value, and that comes out to 12.59 mils. And there's a nice worksheet in there too, if you're interested. And so just in summary, next slide, please. The last slide is that after going through these calculations, the city's mill that we'll be presenting on September 12th for the commission to vote on is 173.87 mils. And that is the end of my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Commissioners?
Mr. Mayor, first, thank you. Normally explaining how the mills work is extremely complicated, but I think you did a good job of summarizing it. One of the things that I was wondering, and you don't need to answer this right now, we talked about this during the first couple budget discussions about what property in Helena we actually, like, what is the percentage that we actually have access to in terms of taxing and assessing, because in Helena, so much of our community is, owned by the state, city, county, nonprofits, some of which, do or may not pay full assessments, diocese, lots of other churches. So I would love it if at some point we could get an analysis of, what we actually have access to provide to generate the revenues to provide the services that we do. The other thing I'd be interested in knowing, I know, and this is just from the last legislative session, they were discussing, how mills compare between cities, counties, school districts across the state, particularly in the Big Seven. I think it'd be really helpful for us to kind of know where we are in comparison. I know sometimes frequently we're at the higher end of that with the Big Seven, but we also have traditionally, I think, had lower mills than the county, for example. And in my opinion, I think we provide a lot more service per citizen than the county does, which is fine. It's just a different operation. But for the amount of public services that we provide, our citizens get a lot of bang for their buck in terms of what's levied and what's expended. So if we could maybe flesh out some of that information, I think that'd be really helpful context just to further explain where we are and how we compare.
Thank you, Commissioner Dean. I do know that other cities do present some of that comparison. I didn't have that information available for this meeting because some of the municipalities and counties are still calculating their levies. I know that the finance director for the county had not finished the school levy calculations yet. So we like to try to present some of that overlapping mill levy information as well. And I know some of the other cities that they do present that, with that. And so I can capture that for you and hopefully have that to you by the September 12th meeting.
Yep, that's
the one thing that is a little bit more difficult to come by is the number of tax exempt entities. I know that it was brought up in a previous commission meeting, and I do recall that. I just haven't had the opportunity to do that kind of analysis, but I think it's very worthwhile to know and very interesting information, because obviously the more tax exempt property that you have, that puts more of a burden on the rest of the property owners to support all the services in the city. So it is an interesting analysis, and hoping that my budget revenue officer can, after he gets his feet under him, he's already starting to plan for next budget season, to try to help with some of those types of working data analysis. I also know that the county did provide their draft inside city limit county levy of 199.51 mils for fiscal 23, but she hadn't finished up with the rest of her calculations for the schools yet.
Thank you. Any other comments, please?
Thank you. So Director Danielson, just for clarity, our staff is recommending levying the full amount of mills.
Thank you, Commissioner Logan. Yes, we are recommending that
Thank
we assess the full mill levy.
Okay. Comments from the public on this topic?
Mayor, I have no public comment.
Okay, we'll turn it over to our Human Resources Director, Director McMahon. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. When interim city manager Burton first started, he asked me to look into developing and implementing a market-based pay plan. And the foundation of a pay plan is an organizational compensation philosophy to guide that work. It really guides us in determining what the city values when we're paying our employees, giving benefits, writing policy, developing pay plans surrounding compensation. And so in front of you in the packet was a compensation philosophy that was developed, vetted by the city manager and vetted by our leadership in order to guide our work as we move forward with making compensation, pay, benefit policy decisions surrounding what we value in employment for the city employees. I don't know if you have questions on the philosophy itself, but that's how it was developed and why it was developed.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Comments or questions from the commission?
Just one.
Go ahead.
So I on the human capital needs, I know how we are addressing offering competitive wages and benefits, and that's with the market analysis that we have funded in this last budget. And then we'll begin an implementation. But can you explain how you envision the need of offering career development and professional progression opportunities within the city?
So that is one of those components that will be informing future policy. We don't have, based on our current, you can see I was in a meeting with some of our pay plan design right now. Yeah, and so that's one of the challenges is there really isn't much nimbleness in developing succession plans and professional growth within our current policy and pay plan. So that's exactly one of the reasons that we put that in the philosophy is so as we develop this going forward, that will be a component that we want to make sure we address.
Awesome. Thanks.
Any other comments from the commission? Do you have any public comments on this topic? Okay, we'll move along. ARPA discussion. Administrator Opitz, you have the floor.
Commissioners, before you tonight, we have a presentation bringing back some of the questions that we spoke about to ARPA and the plan for spending, and allocating that money moving forward. Presentation.
Okay.
Okay. You just tell me when, Amanda.
When? Amanda, we do have the,
We can continue that. We'll work from here. I'll do my best to provide context based on the slides for the public. So just a reminder to where we're at in terms of our local recovery funds. Our initial distribution was 8.4 million roughly. In the time since we have received the second tranche, about $30,000 in investment income has come in. There's, of course, we had our 10-mile project, water treatment project funds that were already allocated. So that would be less 1.8 million, leaving us at this point with roughly $6.7 million that we'll be looking to allocate in the next few months. There it is. Slide, please. Another reminder related to the timeline we're working with. These FLRF funds need to be committed by December 31st, 2014 and spent by December 31st, 2026, 2014, 2024 is on there. And we do have the flexibility because of how we reported our funds as revenue loss. We do have that full amount. The final rule related to how local governments expend those funds allowed us a lot of flexibility. We were able to report our full amount under the $10 million mark, which gives us pretty much flexibility to do what we would like with those funds. Next slide, please. This should look mostly familiar. 2 administrative meetings ago, we walked through this potential timeline for how we walk through these funds through our allocation. As Manager Burton mentioned, we're still in the process of walking through the CIP process. We want you to have a full idea of what our needs are coming up at the city level. In the next few weeks, we'll be putting together the city's recommendations in terms of final recommendations for internal projects that we would like the commission to consider. We're going to be using an internal application process. So departments will be asked to make a business case as well as have authoritative numbers related to their budgets for the items that come forward. It shouldn't be a shock what items come forward. There may be a few that have trickled in the last couple of weeks, but we're generally working from the list that you were provided before as well. So our next administrative meeting will be working through, this was police and fire walls on that meeting as well. And then we intend to bring to you on September 21st, our recommended list of internal projects for your consideration for funding. We hope then to have a decision from the commission.
This happens every meeting.
I was trying to ignore you, but I thought you considered. So we're hoping to have a decision related to those internal allocations on the October 3rd meeting. Of course, that brings to question the funding related to external requests. Right now, the plan would be after those internal discussions have been solidified and we understand exactly what funding is available and how we want to structure those applications for external groups. And that's when we will open those up. So in the middle of October, looking to potentially have decisions or application returned and vetted for completion by the middle of December for consideration for allocation by the commission in January. I will turn the next portion of the presentation over to Dr. Danielson.
Thank you, Amanda. So over the budget year, a lot of capital requests that were originally submitted got postponed. Primarily, we can only fund so much capital within a year, and so they were identified as unfunding and hopefully potentially requesting some ARPA funds to support some of those capital projects. There were some commission initiatives that were considered for potential ARPA funding, and there's also been a couple of new requests that have been identified since adoption of the preliminary budget. And so we, sorry. I think I'm allergic to the meeting or something.
Nice try.
Anyway, I did put in the packet potential funding requests. This is still tentative. We do plan on having all of those internal applications come forward and put their, basically their business case together for each of these items. And then the city manager will look through them, have a conversation with the department heads, and then we'll come forward with a final recommendation of what we would like the commission to consider for internal funding. But we wanted to give you an idea of what those might be.
I would just add that the full list will come in front of the commission.
Okay.
So that you can prioritize that final decision.
And so a couple of the, thank you, Manager Burton. A couple of the new items that weren't discussed when we were talking about, general capital budget requests was the SSD RMS record systems over at the Law and Justice Center. And the county has offered to put in $750,000 of their own ARPA funding in order to fund that project. We had the wildland type 1 fire truck that caught on fire and experienced some severe damage. Not sure exactly at this point. I got an estimated amount of what it would cost to replace that piece of equipment. It was right around $200,000, but we're working on getting repair estimates and with the insurance company as well to come with, perhaps a final request for funding for that. The citywide software replacement, when I originally put that forward for commission consideration, I recall, Mayor, you asked if it was really going to cost $1.5 million. And I said, yeah, probably more. And it is going to cost more. So we have been looking at some revised quotes that have come in and have worked with all of the department heads on our needs assessments and putting that business case together in order to support that additional request. The Parks Department had reallocated the amount for the turf and using that for a bleacher project over at Kendrick Field. And then there's been discussion on the ice rink is in this request. There were some other parks items that were unfunded, like the resident verification system that the commission felt might be important in order to determine inside city residents and outside city residents paying for our recreational activities. Centennial Park Trail and Repair, that was taken out of the budget. There was a initiative that was brought forward of perhaps inputting electrical boxes down at the Hill Park area to support food trucks. And Commissioner Beaver at one point in conversations would like to have some discussion on how we can fund a trail etiquette program and also open lands improvements. There wasn't a lot of discussion about that, but just there was some discussion. And so I put those in as kind of a question mark of what those requests might be, but they're in there for consideration. And then some other facilities items that were originally on the list. We did talk about the tower building that sustained some damage due to lightning, that the county is willing to put in $25,000 if the city puts in $25,000 to repair that facility. And all of that, just these, came out to about $3.7 million. So a pretty big lift, a pretty big request for consideration. And we'll, like Amanda said, we'll be going out to the department heads to ask them to put their business cases together with an internal application. And then we'll bring that forward to the commission for consideration for ARPA funding.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So I see at the back of here, we see the community aid grant funding application. When does this go up?
Mayor,
Sir.
if the commission's generally agreeable with the time frame and the approach, so I think for the commission review, it'll be internal requests first.
Yeah.
So as they put together the uniform application, which is a one-page application, all of those requests will come your way and you will vet what you will and won't fund. And a part of that discussion is the second part, and that is any available funds for outside the city proposals.
Okay,
And so you can say, okay, we're starting with 6.7 million. Let's allocate X amount of dollars to city projects, and let's save X amount of dollars for community projects. I can envision that type of discussion taking place.
you bet.
And so then if you have 20 or 30 internal projects, then it'll be the commission's job to prioritize what will and won't be funded, so that you hit your benchmark for the second half.
Gotcha.
And so if you're generally agreeable to that, then that's what we'll start putting into motion.
Yeah.
As a process.
I don't see a problem with that. I don't know about the rest of the guys, but I don't see a problem with it. I think that's good.
Sounds good.
Can I ask a quick question? So, I know in terms of the education, ARPA dollars and CARES dollars, there currently are some congressional discussions about extending the timeline, the deadline for spending, due to lack of contractors, you know, staffing, supply chain, all the things that we're all running into. Senator Tester's office is like the one that's leading that discussion. Do we know, I only know that on the education side, but from the league side, do we know if those same discussions are happening?
Mayor, Commissioner, yes, they
Okay.
are, and they really started before the bill was even passed.
Right.
Just because of the challenges that you mentioned. I don't think there have been any hard date conclusions to that as yet, but it's definitely on Senator Tester's desk.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I know on the education side, we're like past 2025, probably 2026 is what we're hearing.
So they're already throwing around dates on the
I mean,
education side.
That's, yeah. No, there is language being developed, but nothing has been introduced.
So the answer is yes, and we'll continue to follow that and report back when we have. Some minutes.
Great.
Thank you.
Danae, can you?
Madam Administrator,
Next
oh,
slide.
1 minute. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Are you, do you have more?
We
yeah.
just have
They have
one.
like 2 hours more.
I'll wait.
You sure?
The next slide, please. And that, yeah, so Amanda and I wanted to try to get some direction from the commission on some of the things that Manager Burton indicated as far as, you know, how much would you like to allocate for, you know, external projects, external asks versus internal city projects. You know, what you know, if you had any type of priorities that you wanted to outline for external applicants, like if you wanted to make housing your number one, you know, item or priority for reviewing external applicants, or if there's a particular dollar threshold that you want to set per applicant or not. Eligibility of grant recipients, do you want to limit it to nonprofits or do you want to open it up to small businesses? Those are some of the things that we're looking for some direction from the commission to provide, and when we go down the road.
You bet. Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner.
If I'm not, Mr. Mayor, just a question, Director Danielson, if we follow the timeline that was somewhere, and we finish the internal review and give the direction once we've determined how much is internal, is that sufficient time for you? Okay, good. That's all.
Commissioner?
So, yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So at our July 13th ARPA update, there was among the internal funding requests was an unknown in the street maintenance fund repayment. And I was wondering if we have any sense of that.
Mayor, that still exists. We're setting up another meeting to brief the commission on that very issue in the very near future.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
At the last joint city county meeting, I think there was a discussion amongst the county commissioners about how they can be more helpful with their remaining ARPA dollars as well with external partners. do we have any other updates or communications from the county? Because it'd be great if we could leverage. We're not duplicating efforts, and if, you know, we can pursue some projects jointly to, you know, help out more folks.
So Mayor, Commissioner, at the last joint city county meeting, there was a discussion between the governing bodies about that. The decision was that Tim and Roger would coordinate.
Right.
Roger and Tim are figuring out what that means right now, but we're communicating. Okay. And I have nothing to report back, but I think that's where we left it after the last meeting.
Okay. I mean, in terms of, I know I don't think we're necessarily getting specific direction right now, but I think housing has obviously been an issue that we've been discussing in terms of areas to be helpful. The organizations that, you know, have continued to come to us don't just serve City of Helena residents, they serve county residents too. And so I think that I am strongly encouraging the county to really think about, you know, how they can help specifically in the housing piece, because and particularly like emergency housing and transitional housing, because that is somewhere where I think that we could really make a lot of impact if we are maximizing our dollars together.
So Mayor, you're hosting the next joint city county meeting, and maybe we can just make this the agenda item.
I think that
Yeah, we could.
and Mr. Mayor, I think it might be worth, I mean, we've had other community partners who weren't at the last meeting to present that I know will be, you know, providing or will be applying, I think. One off the top of my head, I'm sure Family Promise will be, and they're, you know, a large number of the churches that are part of that are not in city limits either. So I think that that's ensuring that all the folks who we know are very actively pursuing these dollars, being at the table would be helpful.
So Mayor, Commissioner, I think, you know, that's a really good point, and that gives Roger and I something to talk about and visit about in terms of how to structure the next joint.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Thank you. Relative to Mr. Ham's question on the open container discussion, I'm hopeful that that can be on the city calendar and, you know, announced by the PIO that this discussion will be taking place, because I think it's an important community discussion. So thank you.
Okay. At this time, is there anyone from the public wishes to address the commission? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor and Commissioners, members, of city staff. I'm Kevin Ham. I run the Montana Pride, which just happened a few weeks ago. Well, it feels like it was yesterday. I haven't really recovered. But it was last month. A fair few people showed up in town. A couple people spoke at the events that we had going on throughout the week. It was a pretty successful event, and I wanted to extend my thanks to the city for all the work that we did. I would also like to ask the staff to help us reduce some of that paperwork and time for going forward. We, as many of you know, we did have some incidents where people made threats against our community. The police department was on the ball with that. For that, I appreciate and thank you very much. I would like to make sure that we have that going forward, because that was excellent service and very much appreciated by all the members of my community. As we look forward to next year, we will have Montana Pride here again. We are part of 8 prides that will happen throughout the state over the course of the year. We are moving to a new week to kind of spread things out. We are taking another weekend in Helena where no big city events are, so that we can bring more people into town, so that we can bring more revenue, so we can have more fun. And I expect you all to be at the drag show and dance. Some of you may need to be in drag. Mayor Collins, I'll talk to you about that later.
Negative.
With everything that we had going on this year, it was an entire week of really, really successful events. We had almost 500 people at our drag brunch to kick things off. We had about 12,000 people at the drag show at the end of the week on Saturday. We are still looking at the financial impacts that we've had overall to the city. but the businesses downtown had direct impact, and every single one of them has been super happy with what happened and how it worked, and that works because the city works with us, so we appreciate that. We do want to get to the point where the open container is something that we can request. It's been 4 years that we've asked for a policy and process on this, so we're hoping that that gets done soon. We do understand that larger events like Montana Pride are different than smaller events like the brewers doing their one vendor. But we need to have a way to get this done that doesn't require me to come up and bark at everybody for 45 days. Mostly because other organizations keep coming to me asking how we get it done, and I tell them I go up and I bark at all of you for 45 days. So we'd like to get that on the agenda and get that accomplished so that other people can bring more events into town. We'd also like to ask the city at some point to consolidate the permitting process. Right now we have 7 different permits that we have to go through that are all repeating information up at the top 16 times. They're not digital. We can't fill them out all the time. And we'd like to get that streamlined a little bit because that's a lot of our time that goes into it. So those are our, just high overview of everything that happened. It was a really great week. We hope to continue to do that every year from here on out because we had a lot of fun, and we just want to make it faster so that you have to see less of me.
Yeah, let's get it done, guys.
What are the new dates?
Oh, so next week we will kick off with our drag brunch on July 30th. And our big day will be August 5th. So right after Stampede, so after you get your cowboy boots off, you can put on your glitter. We have extra in case you need some. And we will have events throughout the week. We're going to expand a lot of the little events that started out as just, hey, we think this might work, but now become massive events that everybody likes to go to. The gaming night is probably going to be at 2 different facilities because we filled up headwaters to the point that they had to turn people away. We are looking to change some of the timing on things because it was really hot for the parade, so people ran. So our parade, it's supposed to be an hour long, was 40. Oh, that's the other thing. Cops aren't allowed to set the pace for the parade because fat people can't run. You need to stop that. Our parade was 31 minutes long, and everybody was huffing and puffing. I got tired watching it. It was sad. But it was also really hot, so we might move it to a little bit earlier in the day to have more stuff going on throughout the afternoon. Because I don't know if you know this, but drag
Thank you. Any other person from the community wishes to address? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jordan Conley from downtown Helena. I'm the operations director for the commissioners. I'm here just to reiterate what Mr. Ham has said about the permitting process. In addition to there being so many different permits, not all of them are available online. You have to know who to contact, and often that person is not the most obvious person. And I know that the website is undergoing an overhaul, and as part of that. But in the meantime, we would really appreciate some sort of streamlining of that system, particularly because our office is fielding a lot of requests from people looking to do events as to how to navigate the permitting process. And so we'd like some assistance from the city.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to assure you, ma'am, we hear you and we'll look into that. Yes,
I do have one hand raised online.
go ahead.
Mark Judeman.
Go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Mark Judeman, representing the Citizen Conservation Board today. I'm just would like to mention to you all that we sent a letter in May of 2022 regarding asking if we might have a commissioner ex officio member of the Citizen Conservation Board. And that also referenced our September 2021 letter regarding extension of the CCB without sunset, expanding the CCB. And I know that you all have been really busy even before so many unforeseen events. And so I understand that it may take a while. And I also understand that there may be a process to draft a resolution that needs to go, you all need to go through. But I'm just hoping that You might be able to move forward with that soon. Bring it up in your admin meeting and then move it to your regular commission meeting, hopefully quickly. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Judeman.
Mr. Mayor, I think I think the city manager and city clerk Christian clerk can confirm this, but at our last administrative, I believe it was our last administrative meeting, we discussed kind of what the process will look like for all advisory committees. There's been a process that's been undergoing a lot of consideration from all sorts of departments for about the last year and a half, about getting streamlined bylaws for our advisory committees and ensuring that all of them are in order in terms of resolution and that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So at the last admin meeting, the discussion was in the fall, wrapping up that process, which could include ensuring, everything is spelled out clearly in resolution and the bylaws are adopted by the commission. Would Tim and Danae, would you say that's accurate?
Mr. Mayor,
That's a
Commissioner
yes or
Dean,
no.
we've had many discussions on this very topic. I have been working with the city attorney and the city manager's office since the interim city manager has come on board. I think that it's ongoing. We have internal processes we're trying to clean up. Many of the projects, including the board's project, had to be put on pause due to the unfortunate death of Commissioner Fever. That's been my office's priority, as you know, over the past month. So my hope is to revisit that topic with all of you in our individual meetings, as well as potentially with the city manager's office and the city attorney. Since ultimately, when we're drafting any legal documents like resolution that might impact these boards, we need to involve that office. So I hope to have an update to you for sure within the next month or so, especially once we fulfill that vacancy on the commission.
I would just add, Mayor, Commissioner, it is on our list of things to do.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Do we have any other members of the community that wishes to address the commission? Going once, going twice, gone. This meeting is adjourned.
Put a time.